I mentioned Eric Greiteins. Let's get to what is going on here. You guys might remember this dude. Right now, he's running for Senate in Missouri in the Republican primary. He's the former governor of the state. And he previously resigned in scandal. The thing that you likely remember is that he was accused of blindfolding and tying up a woman he was having an affair with and taking a picture of her naked to use as blackmail to keep her from talking about the affair.
Yeah, while he was the governor.
While he was governor. That's probably what you remember is those allegations. But I actually think what he really resigned over was that there was an investigation into corruption and campaign finance law breaking within the, Republican-held Missouri legislature that was very likely to lead to his impeachment. So not only are there horrific claims of violence and abuse and blackmail out there, but at the time he also resigns because he's about to be impeached over corruption and misuse of a nonprofit donor list for campaign fundraising and those sorts of things. So that's Eric Greiteins. So a little bit of time passes. He decides this is his moment to make a comeback. He leans into, all of the right sort of MAGA-based rhetoric about stop the steal. He's very aggressive about hating Mitch McConnell and these sorts of things. And now we have new revelations, which are even more, or I should say allegations, which are even more shocking than the last allegations. And this is based on a sworn affidavit from his ex-wife about his abusive behavior during the course of their marriage. Let's go ahead and put this AP tear sheet up on the screen. The headline here reads, ex-wife accuses top Missouri GOP Senate candidate of abuse. I'm going to read you a bit of what she says here, so just hang with me because I want you to have the details of what she is alleging. She says in this sworn affidavit, prior to our divorce, during an argument in late April 2018, Eric knocked me down and confiscated my cell phone, wallet, and keys so that I was unable to call for help or extricate myself and our children from our home. She also says, I became afraid for my safety and that of our children at our home. Behavior included physical violence towards our children, such as cuffing our then 3-year-old son across the face at the dinner table in front of me and yanking him around by his hair. In 2019, she says, one of her sons came home from a visit with his dad with, quote, a swollen face, bleeding gums, and loose tooth. He said dad hit him. However, Eric said they were roughhousing and it had been an accident. That tooth eventually had to be removed. At another point, Eric Greiteins purchased a gun, she says, but refused to tell her where it was. He threatened to kill himself unless I provided specific public political support. This was during his last series of scandals. The behavior was so alarming, she wrote, on 3 separate occasions, multiple people other than myself were worried enough to intervene to limit Eric's access to firearms. I started sleeping in my children's room simply to keep them safe. In another incident, Greiteins made a reference to the fact he had the children and she didn't, sort of implicit threat there, while trying to persuade her to delete emails she had sent to the family therapist seeking help. Eric threatened to accuse me of child abuse if I did not delete the emails and convince the therapist to delete them. He threatened to come to the airport and have me arrested for kidnapping and child abuse, saying that because of his authority as a former governor who had supported law enforcement, the police would support him and not believe me. So these allegations run the gamut from direct violent abuse of his wife and of his kids to extreme threatening behavior and manipulation. So extraordinary claims here being made. Again, this is part of their divorce settlement and court filings. This is a sworn affidavit from his ex-wife. And, the reality is, prior to these revelations, Greiteins was actually leading in the polls and likely to be the Republican nominee. Let's go ahead and put this up on the screen. This is according to a Trafalgar Group poll, which has been fairly accurate for Republicans and was more accurate than we expected in the presidential election. They had Greiteins at 30.5%, Eric Schmidt in second at 23%, and Vicky Hartzler, who has been endorsed by Josh Hawley, who's sort of like a relatively longtime rival of Greiteins, no love lost between the two of them, is at 16%. And as we referenced before, let's go ahead and put Politico up on the screen. Trump was reportedly maybe about to endorse this guy. Now, this is a report from Politico. They say that Eric Greiteins sort of trashing McConnell led to Trump being interested in maybe endorsing him. This in spite of the fact that previously he had reportedly made some disparaging comments about Greitens because of the prior scandal. And I just have to read you the kicker on this article, which is just from like 2 weeks ago. They talked to some sort of like Republican analyst pundit type. At the very end of the article, she says, I'm like, what are you going to attack Greitens on? Everything he's ever done is out there and been out there. So I'm not sure their theory is good. I'm not sure they can take him down. What are you going to tell people about him that they don't already know? Come on.
I think that the reason this pairs so well with what we just previously talked about is that it's not an exaggeration to say that Greitens built his entire post-scandal career on Stop the Steal. Yep. This guy was constantly on Twitter, on Steve Bannon's show, talking about the election was stolen, we're going to challenge the results. He's one of the most naked political operatives. I've known about Greitens for a long time, and I can't say everything that I know, but what I do know is he's a total political opportunist and political psychopath, willing to say anything that needs to be said to curry favor with the donors, with the billionaire class, and anything basically in order to get elected. There's a reason that he's widely hated in his own home state, but I think it's very noteworthy that Trump was willing to look past a lot of that because Greitens understood that the key to Trump's heart was stop the steal and saying screw you to Mitch McConnell. And that's exactly what he's leaning into now.
Which is also, by the way, about stop the steal.
Exactly. It's more about stop the steal. And actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Trump still does endorse him. Maybe it's just such a bad look that it's not possible, but just look at how much Greitens is bending over backwards in order to make sure that he can curry Trump's favor. Let's go ahead and skip forward to C5 and let's take a listen.
Well, Steve, the reason why shots are being fired at us is that I was the first guy in the country to come out and say that when I'm elected to the United States Senate as an America First senator, that I'm voting against Mitch McConnell. And what we found out today is that, and your audience has seen this, you've seen the lies against President Trump. You saw the lies against Brett Kavanaugh. What we found out today is that rhinos are now working to make more false allegations. Just this past week, literally all the way up until yesterday morning, this past week, I was with my boys for an entire week. We had a beautiful time. My most important job is being a great father to my boys. And we found out, we just learned that my ex-wife was in Washington, D.C., meeting with political operatives. And just this morning, they launched a series of false allegations against us. And the fact is, these are completely baseless. And just like, just like the fact that we saw before, a Soros-funded prosecutor came after us. Now they've been charged with 7 felonies. She was found guilty of over 70 instances of perjury. The truth will come out. And what I can tell you, Steve, is as early as tomorrow morning, the story about how the political operatives worked with Mitch McConnell's supporters to bring this out is all coming to light.
Well, it is today morning, and
haven't seen that story yet.
Wow, apparently he follols me on Twitter. I just realized that, so
creepy.
That's kind of creepy. Sorry, Eric.
That guy makes my skin crawl, for real.
So anyway, whenever I look at all of what's happening here, it's a very important lesson, too, also in terms of the MAGA machine. I mean, Steve Bannon has been willing to platform this guy for months on War Room. To be fair, he platforms a lot of cranks like Josh Mandel and many other people because they all want to reach his audience. But he has been de facto pushed and endorsed by a lot of people for completely just sucking up to Trump based on Stop the Steal. That's all it takes. You can be accused of some terrible behavior by several different women. And look, I obviously believe in due process and all of that, but the guy has a proven track record and an admitted adulterer. Let's go ahead and put Josh Hawley's tweet up there on the screen, just showing you he has no love even in the state of Missouri. He said, quote, If you hit a woman or a child, you belong in handcuffs, not the United States Senate. It's time for Eric Greiteins to leave this race. He's not going anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if he still wins the primary. And if Trump does not stand on an election stage and say, go ahead and vote for this guy. Although it will be popcorn-inducing if he does have to serve with Hawley in the U.S. Senate. Hawley tried to take, that investigation. He was behind a lot of that whenever he was the Attorney General of the state of Missouri.
That's
so, they're big-time political rivals. Anyway, yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think if Greitens does win the Republican nomination, which I'm not so confident about at this point because there are other candidates who have, the backing of other political figures in the state and have money behind them. But if he does win the Republican nomination, I think there's a good chance he loses. I mean, if Roy Moore can lose in Alabama,
right.
Missouri is not nearly as red as Alabama. And frankly, we've interviewed Lucas Kunce on this show. He's running for the Democratic nomination. And I think he's running a very effective campaign. It's, really like rip-roaring populist, leaning into the right issues. So, and polling even before this scandal, Republicans were nervous about Greitens being the nominee because the polling had the Lucas Kunce and the other Democrats really close with him already, even without these latest allegations. So I do think that there's a good chance that if Greitens is the Republican nominee, he could lose. He could manage to lose in the fall, even though that should be, it should be an absolute gimme for the Republicans. And, his thing with Bannon, it's so predictable. They all think that they're Trump and they can get away with this shit, And Trump was never accused of, violence against women. Let me be clear, not conflating the allegations against Trump, although there were some serious ones there too. But, they all think that they can just say, it's the liberals and it's it's political operatives and it's Mitch McConnell's people and it's all a conspiracy. That may work with some portion of the diehard MAGA base, but with the broader, your normie Missouri voter, I don't think so.
I think that's a good point. And it just reminded of Todd Akin, who lost in that squeaker of a race back in 2012.
Legitimate rape.
Legitimate rape, exactly, with those comments, which put Claire McCaskill in the Senate for another 6 years. So it is certainly possible.
Well, here's the other thing you may look for, because Claire McCaskill helped to make Todd Akin the nominee. Democrats spend money to bolster Akin in a very clever way. Basically, I think the ads painted his other opponents as not sufficiently conservative enough or something like that, not Tea Party faithful. That was that was the political moment at the time. So they're spending helps to bolster Todd Akin, knowing that he is damaged goods in terms of a candidate. McCaskill should have been dead in the water. I mean, she really shouldn't have had a prayer in that race whatsoever. And she managed to pull off the victory because they got the candidate that they wanted. And so yeah, this is what you get when your whole political project collapses down to personal loyalty to one particular figure and his choice conspiracy theories of the day.
Yeah, exactly right.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.